Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Sias. Episode 110, truthfully, is going to be a very different one. In this fight, I'm going to break down, and in this situation, I'm going to do something a little different. This is something called If I Were Joel Diaz. Joel Diaz is the coach of the man that's going to be facing Canelo Alvarez this weekend, Avni Yildirims. I'm going to have the very, very difficult task of formulating a game plan and what Avni should try and Joel should try to implement in this fight. I'm not sitting here and taking the side of Avni Yildirim. I don't want you to think I'm saying that Canelo is going to lose this fight. I think Canelo is going to win. He's going to look spectacular doing it. But I did want to kind of brainstorm and think more or less how I would attack it. And of course, this is just my opinion. My word isn't anything, or my opinion isn't any more valid than yours. If you feel like Avni can win, that's totally fine. I'm just sitting here and being very confident in Canelo Alvarez winning. But if I was a coach, it's my job to come up with something to basically give him the best chance to win. He may not win, but if Avni does his thing and people like what they see, maybe he can fight still amongst the top 10. I mean, he was the number one ranked WBC contender at super middleweight, and this is Canelo Alvarez's mandatory. So if I'm Avni, two things I want to kind of focus on. Number one, this is something that does matter, and not a lot of people know this. However, Canelo Alvarez and Avni Yildirim are very familiar with one another. They used to work together in camp, and they've sparred many, many rounds. As you know, this has happened with this weekend in MMA. It's happened in boxing. When you are part of a stable, you guys have rounds and rounds with each other. You have to practice certain scenarios, so you are familiar with the opponent if you've had sparred before. So Avni Yildirim may not be as surprised as other fighters are when they're in the ring with Canelo. Canelo Alvarez has all the tools. He has good head movement, good back foot. He can counter, he can punch, be on the front foot. He can really do it all, and you see his defense is impeccable, right? Superior head movement, really, really good movement. He can catch on the inside. He can fight going forward and backwards. And he's just a complete package. And I'm not trying to sit here and talk about Canelo because everyone knows all this stuff. So he is ranked number one pound for a reason. But seeing the final boss or seeing your opponent and not being shocked with the speed, the timing, you see the real Canelo Alvarez. Is it a fight? No, it's not. Sparring is sparring. You're practicing, so maybe you haven't seen everything that Canelo Alvarez has because he's working with you. Maybe he's trying to polish a new tool in his toolkit. You don't know more or less what's going on. But the one thing you can say is the familiarity does matter. So I think that's a positive going into this fight. Avni also is much bigger than Canelo. He's 5'11 and a half, almost 6 feet. And he's a natural 175-pounder to 168-pounder. He walks around about 180, and he's a really thick guy. And Canelo Alvarez, while he does look massive, is still, in my opinion, just getting comfortable at 168. He did move up to 175, and he did beat Sergey Kovalev, but clearly he's kind of falling around here, and he feels comfortable. However, Yildirim is a much bigger dude. He is almost... I want to say Canelo Alvarez is listed at 5'8". I don't know if that's true. I mean, Yildirim looked a lot bigger, but yeah, he does have the size advantage. So that's the first thing I just want to recognize. I know Yildirim is the bigger guy. He has to impose that size. He has to impose that length. But I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but Callum Smith did the same thing. So Sergey Kovalev had the same advantage. A lot of people have size against Canelo. Even Rocky Fielding looked like Canelo Alvarez's big brother, right? He looked massive. But size is size, and if you're not really shocked by the hand speed of Canelo, if you're not really shocked at fighting the person at such a high level, being bigger is certainly going to take its toll. Now, I'm not saying that's the strategy, right? This is the strategy, and I'm going to kind of touch on that right now. First thing, Avni, I looked at certain fights before Joel Diaz, and I'm going to sit here and say this. I'm not trying to denigrate Avni. He's certainly a formidable fighter. He has very goodwill. He comes forward. He keeps the elbows in nice and tight, keeps the hands up. Very traditional boxing stance. However, he doesn't display head movement, right? He really likes the head being in the center. He likes shelling up. Very similar to Arthur Abraham, in my opinion. He likes that high guard, walk down, little subtle pressure. In this fight, he cannot use that style against Canelo, right? When he's shelled up and when he's trying to walk forward with his hands up, not moving his head, he gets lit up, right? Sure, your elbows are tucked in, and sometimes when people go to his body to try to make the hands drop, right, he's able to get some shots off. He has a pretty strong jab. His left hook is pretty decent, and his right hand's pretty decent. But in the fights, and I looked back and I looked at some of these fights with Chris Eubank Jr. and with Anthony Durrell, he has a tendency to get hit with uppercuts and short, sharp hooks. After the uppercut lands, he drops those hands and that hook comes around winging, right? So Avni Yildirim has to kind of change his guard. That's number one. He cannot come forward with his hands up and just trying to walk Canelo Alvarez down. Canelo Alvarez is an animal on the inside. He couldn't get walked down by Triple G, who, in my opinion, I know he's not as big as Avni Yildirim, but Triple G hits hard with anybody at 168. He can hit hard, and he would be a top puncher at 168. So if Canelo Alvarez can walk him back and use his hand speed and use leverage and use that head movement and tempo and speed to back him up with short shots, he cannot just stand there and be a punching bag. Now, I think that's why he employed Joel Diaz. Joel Diaz is going to try to not make him so straight up where he just walks forward the whole time like a punching bag, hoping that the opponent tires out. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm just going to give him a realization if he doesn't know that. I mean, he's been in the ring with him already in sparring. Canelo Alvarez is not going to get tired. So you're not going to walk him down with your hands up, and you're not going to penetrate that slick defense. If he finds out that, hey, he's getting tired, he's going to give you movement, very similar to Anthony Durrell. Believe it or not, Canelo can switch to southpaw. He can also box orthodox. He doesn't bring it out often, but if he has to move around, touch him up, he can. So that game plan of being in the turtle shell, walking forward, trying to punch in between Canelo, that's not going to work. So he has to kind of go somewhere else. Another strategy I would try is, all right, show him that, hey, I'm going to come straight up and make it seem like I'm going to do business as usual. Keep the guard up, show the turtle shell, right? And then maybe show a Philly shell. Bring the hand down, right? Invite Canelo to see something different. Will this work? I don't know. I doubt it because Canelo Alvarez, again, is a very crafty boxer and he may know more or less what's going on, and he's very defensively sound. But the goal for Yildirim when he's creating offense is, I know he likes to take a few shots in order to throw one hard one. And this one, my suggestion would be try to be a little more of a volume puncher. Put your hands together, and yes, I know Canelo is a fantastic counterpuncher. I know all these things, and I'm not sitting here and saying this is the way he beat Canelo. But in order to give himself the best chance, you have to accentuate his strengths, right? He has a pretty solid punch. He's a pretty tough, durable guy, and he also has familiarity with Canelo. So if he knows what Canelo's wrinkles are, maybe Joel Diaz has seen and is familiar with Canelo, right? He's been watching film. More often than not, I would look at the fights that he's had the most trouble, right? If you think about the fights he's had the most trouble, you think of Erislandy Lara, who is a fleet-footed lefty who moves around. Avni Yildirim is not that. So you cannot create this fleet-footed lefty overnight who counterpunches and doesn't really sit and trade. He doesn't allow Canelo Alvarez to trade with him. He kind of hits him, gets out. Okay? But I could see Yildirim trying to lure Canelo to walk forward and rush into something. Be offensive, move your hands on the back foot, kind of throw a double jab right hand. Don't overcommit. Very similar to that Sergey Kovalev strategy, right? Say what you want about Kovalev. Yes, he did get knocked out, but prior to the knockout, Kovalev had some success. He was moving that jab, never really committed. The only thing I didn't like about the Sergey Kovalev fight was Kovalev really doesn't have a hook. So when he was trying to check Canelo on his turns after he would jab, his hook was kind of lame. He never really tossed it. Yildirim has a better hook than Sergey Kovalev, but Kovalev, in my opinion, has a better jab. So my suggestion would be for Joel Diaz, and I'm sure they're not showing you the back foot stuff they've tried, is he's going to try to make Yildirim be on the back foot in the beginning to get that range to force Canelo forward and fight the fight that he wants. Because eventually, Yildirim is going to have to sit down, bend his knees, and fight on the inside with Canelo and hopefully try to catch him with something big. But in order to do so, you can't immediately go to that strategy, right? If I constantly do the same thing and I know exactly what you're going to do, plus I'm familiar with you, I'm going to sit there, wait for you to come in with the hands up. I know that uppercut's going to be there all day. You're going to try to hedge the uppercut by blocking it, and then the hook is just going to eat him up, right? That Eddie Reynoso strategy of the left hook and jab, essentially pinning that right hand to your body, is fantastic. They throw that jab with conviction. They throw that hook with conviction, and it's very, very sharp. It's very, very fast. And before you know it, you're on defense, because if you open up, you're going to eat a counter, right? It's basically Sophie's choice. You pick your poison, and it's going to be trouble for you. So if Yildirim can sit back, use that jab, be patient, maybe throw a couple of uppercuts when Canelo tries to come in and go low, because Avni is the taller guy. That's when you catch him. Catch him on the front foot. Catch him when he's trying to lunge for something or tries to throw that uppercut. You throw your hook, right? It's a lot easier to see and time someone with speed if you don't have a speed advantage on the back foot, right? I feel like Callum Smith didn't open up enough against Canelo, but at the same time, I understand that, because what did Canelo do? He hurt that right arm, right? He was attacking that left arm with hooks and rights, and he just kept hammering it, where if Callum decided to open up, right, he would have been in trouble. He would have gotten stopped. And instead, Callum Smith, I'm not sitting here and saying anything about that, because Callum Smith is a really, really good fighter. Canelo is just that good. And he wanted to just have a solid performance. Like, hey, I went through it with Canelo. I made it. I'm living to fight another day. So Avni, if he could be on that back foot, I'm not saying you have to throw bombs, but commit a little bit, throw a couple of shots, move around, turn, check Canelo when he comes in with a check hook. Make him be defensive. Sometimes the best defense is a pretty solid offense, and you don't need this really, really explosive offense to impose your will. If you're the taller guy, you have a little bit of time and you have a little bit of space, you can land some good shots, right? However, when he does do that, if he can get some rounds in the bank and force Canelo into a firefight, this is where he has to implement the angles. Angles are great. I'm not going to sit here and say that you can fight someone straight up all the time. Angles are the key to boxing. The goal is hit, don't get hit, especially on the inside, right? Canelo, very familiar with angles. He fights on angles. He makes it seem like he's in front of you. He hits you with something, then he's off to the side, and you feel like, what the hell happened? He's still there, but I can't touch him. All an angle is if you're straight up with someone, you take a little bit of a turn. Now, whoever's to the side and not in front has an angle. However, to neutralize angles, I'm not going to sit here and say all you have to do is, but if someone turns, you turn with them. Very similar to Teofimo Lopez. When Loma tried to give him that right angle turn, all Teo did was feel him, turn with him, and now the angle that you're used to getting isn't there. Canelo loves that left hand to the body, right? So my strategy would be, right, pretty much if you're in front of him, you know Canelo's going to try to launch that left hook to the body. What I would do is hedge the uppercut, right? Keep that right hand, elbows in, hedge the uppercut. You know the left uppercut's coming and you know the right uppercut's coming, because those are two punches that set up that left hook to the body. And again, I'm not saying that Canelo's not going to get there. I'm just giving you the most I can give you to take what we have in front of us, which is Avni Yildirim, and trying to figure something out for Canelo. When Canelo tries to hit that left hook to the body, you're going to have a shot to counter. Okay? So you throw that, he tries to throw that right uppercut, maybe you throw your hook, right? Just to kind of make that right hand stay at bay, which is the uppercut setup punch, right? Canelo loves that right uppercut, dip to the side, throw that hook to the body, right? He loves to also double up the hook. So if you're hedging the uppercut, right, turn with him. He's going to throw the hook, right? You're taller. The only way he can get inside is by stepping forward into the side to get out the way. Turn with him and throw your shot, right? The counter for the left hook is the right hand. Maybe you time that left hook that he's trying to come in with and you shoot a right hand just to make his left hand stay at bay, where you land and he lands, but he can't sit down and plant that foot because the most important part about the left hook to the body is how sharp and whether or not you can see it. If your elbow's not there, he's going to hit it when it hits, right? But if you can knock him off balance and maybe he doesn't get full power on it, I'm not sitting here and saying you're not going to hurt, but you have a shot, right? Another key, in my opinion, is go to Canelo's body. When you're throwing that jab, and I had mentioned before that you go on the back foot, you move around, try to see more or less the timing, what he's going to bring to the table, right? What is Canelo going to try to do? You go forward, or you go backwards, you still have to jab. But we know Canelo's biggest attribute and the thing that makes his boxing style so sexy, because Canelo Alvarez's boxing style is dope. He has good head movement, it's simple, but his offense is sharp. He gets knockouts, but he's also slick. So I really, really like that. It's almost like a hybrid of Floyd Mayweather and old Canelo. It's awesome because he does have defensive prowess. He also does implement the shoulder roll, and he has a hybrid guard. It's not just one thing. But one thing you have to realize is, and this is something that a lot of people know, and it's a simple thing, and again, this is still Canelo. He's going to know what you're going to try to do. If you're throwing a jab, he's moving his head. You're missing. When you miss, there is a counter punch opportunity. You are stuck. You cannot keep your balance if you overcommit. But if you're just moving that jab, making Canelo move his head, right? He knows you're going to go to the body, but you still want to go to the body, right? Canelo is a fantastic fighter, but everybody feels body shots. They may not show it to you. They may have experience and kind of hide it better than others. But if you can really, really move that front hand, make him move his head, maybe you throw a right hand at his chest, maybe you throw a right hand to the body, throw an uppercut to the body. Try to touch that body early. Maybe you could take away a little bit of sting on those punches, right? When you look at the fight with Daniel Jacobs specifically, Daniel Jacobs switched to southpaw from time to time to kind of catch Canelo. If anything, you saw there was one sequence where Canelo's moving his head, and then Daniel Jacobs, mid-punching combination, swings a left hook and transitions to lefty and catches him, right? I think Joel Diaz is going to try to implement where you shift from time to time just to give a different angle, right? But one thing Jacobs did do as well is go to the body, right? Your head can move all you want, but the things that don't move are the chest, the shoulders, the elbows, your body. I mean, your head can move as much as you want, but your body's going to be there. So be disciplined, shoot that jab, go to the body. This is getting harder and harder because if I had a better, I don't want to say here specimen because he's not, but the canvas we have here is limited, right? The person that's going to beat Canelo, in my opinion, is going to be the fleet-footed fighter that's lefty and awkward and won't engage with him, right? Because that's always going to give you problems. That's why I feel like Billy Joe Saunders is going to give Canelo a hard fight. I don't know if he's going to win, but he does have a better opportunity than Avni Yildirims. Being tough, going forward, trying to implement angles with one fight with Joel Diaz, I don't think is going to do it. But these are kind of tips that I would do if I was formulating a game plan. First 4 rounds, I would literally try to stay tall, try to see more or less the way Canelo is going to attack me. Use that jab, step back, try to see more or less what angle he's trying to take, what punches you're going to really try to land. Is he going to still stick with that right uppercut, left hook to the body, doubling up the hook, throwing sharp jabs? I don't know. Is he going to try to just wait for me to move my jab, commit, and then all of a sudden come in and launch me to the body or go over the top with that hard right hand? You don't know. So I think those first couple of rounds, take your time, use that jab, and occasionally hit him with a hard body shot. When you're on the inside, don't try to hold, kind of feel more or less what's going on. Be big, be tall, but then grab, right? Make Canelo have to inch forward again, right? After round 1 through 4, depending on how the fight's going, this is where I would change tactics. I'll make pretend like, hey, we're going to go backwards again. And then when Canelo gets a little frustrated, if you're being successful, if you're not, then you're going to just have to go for broke and try to knock out Canelo Alvarez, which is a tall task. And now the entire game plan changes. So at this point, give him a little bit of both. Step back. When you feel that leg almost near the ropes, or you feel like you're getting close to the ropes, stay in your ground, give an angle, turn, do it again. That's what I would try to do in rounds 5 to 8, kind of go. If that's not working and you feel like you're behind, then at that point, you're going to have to do what you got to do. You're going to have to bring those elbows in, try to move your head a little bit. But the most dangerous thing that Yildirim does is when he throws his hooks, that right hand is down. Now, against Canelo Alvarez, you're not going to be able to get away with that. I mean, Canelo Alvarez has a better left hook than Chris Eubank Jr., right? You can't compare the two. But if he can get that right hand up and bend himself to the side a little bit, right? Maybe he can hedge both the hook and the body hook. You keep that elbow tucked in. You're the taller guy. Maybe you sit back a little more and try to reach that hook across. You can counter a hook with a hook. Canelo Alvarez does sometimes keep that right hand down when he throws the hook too, because he's covering that left hook to the body. So, being the taller guy on the inside, just make sure when you throw your hooks and you're going to hook with Canelo, keep that right hand tucked, because you know he's going for the liver or he's going for the head. But again, I'm drawing straws here and I'm in an impossible position, and I'm having a hard time figuring out how I would attack Canelo Alvarez with Avni Yildirims. If I had someone else like a Billy Joe Saunders, it becomes a lot more easy. Or even a Caleb Plant, where I think Caleb Plant and Billy Joe are going to give Canelo some issues. I do think Canelo is the best out right now, and he's pound for pound for a reason. So just to kind of recap, if all else fails, then you got to go for the knockout. Yildirim's best punch by far, in my opinion, is his right hand. But I just don't see it being enough. I mean, throw the right hand. It'll keep the left hook at bay. As I said, the same principles that apply for Canelo apply for Yildirim. If you can pin someone's right hand to them, if you could pin their left hand to them by using your right hand to kind of keep them at bay, using that jab, throw a right hand occasionally, make Canelo keep his hands up and be honest. And then you go to his body and kind of make the hands come down naturally due to work rate. But I'm trying to come up with this. My goal and my game plan would be first couple of rounds, use the jab, find your patience, find your rhythm, kind of locate Canelo, see more or less what he's trying to do, see his tactics, right? Then round 4 kind of get a little more aggressive. If you can, put your hands together with mini shots, smother, try to make Canelo inch his way forward. But if the boy's having success, at a certain point, you're just going to have to throw it all out the window, stay in the trenches, keep your elbows in, keep your hands up, and just pray that your hands up when you're exchanging. You're going to have to punch with him. He's faster than you. His punches are going to get there to the point faster. But if you can catch Canelo with a punch maybe he doesn't expect, maybe you give him an angle that he hasn't seen before in the ring with you, given the fact that he's very familiar with you since you guys sparred, maybe you give yourself a chance. I really felt like I was drawing for straws here because Avni Yildirim was knocked out by Chris Eubank Jr. Canelo was on another planet in comparison to Eubank Jr. Anthony Durrell is a pretty good fighter, and one judge had Avni Yildirim winning. I don't know how that was possible, but Durrell gave him a lot of issues, and Canelo also was a head above Anthony Durrell. Durrell is no punk. He could switch. He could do it all too, and he's not a bad fighter, but he's not Canelo Alvarez. So this is my episode for today. I know the struggle is not as organized as normal, but I'm really, really trying to figure this out, and I'm just giving you a game plan, more or less, not to get dominated. But at the end of the day, it depends if he wants to survive. I think Avni Yildirim can survive, but that hands up, just waiting there, trying to walk forward, Arthur Abraham style, isn't going to cut it, especially when Canelo can break you down. I know Chavez Jr. was able to finish. I can see Yildirim trying to finish too, but do you really just want to be a punching bag for Canelo? Or will you go out with glory, show off, and maybe earn another fight with someone else that you can potentially bounce back from? I don't know. Well, here's the episode for today. Enjoy, and I hope you have a great day. Feel free to follow the podcast on Instagram at Good Boxing Podcast. I'm putting the episodes on IGTV. If you just want to watch or listen to the episodes directly on the Instagram, feel free. However, I could only put 15 minutes as of right now. So if you want the full episode, feel free. After you're done, you like what you're hearing, feel free to go to the Captivate link in the bio. Follow on Spotify, follow on Apple, leave a review. Thank you so much. Have a great day.